Good morning. Remembrance Day is defined as being able to bring to one's mind an awareness of past experiences. We are gathered this Remembrance Day to commemorate the sacrifice that Canadians have made all over the globe in defense of freedom, and yet, as the definition would suggest, it is impossible for many of us to remember the great wars that are covered in our high school curriculums. Few of us have any direct connection to the experiences of the First or Second World War. Many of the memories of war shared by those in this room today are far more fresh. They are from conflicts in countries like Afghanistan, Honduras, Iraq, and Sudan. They are not abstract concepts. They are fresh scars that are easily reopened every time you are forced to confront the horror of the war experience. The horror of losing your home, your security, your livelihood, and even in some tragic cases, your loved ones. Some of us understand war as a list of battlefields, generals, politicians, and statistics. But listening to those who've experienced this tragedy firsthand, we realize that war cannot be defined only by numbers. War is a human experience. Whether a Canadian soldier willing to risk it all to fight oppression in Nazi Germany, or a father in Afghanistan desperate to keep his family safe as he flees the front lines of a military theater that does not discriminate between soldiers and civilians. Their stories and lessons are invaluable. As our population grows and changes, our understanding of Remembrance Day, a memorial tradition inaugurated by King George V in 1919, changes as well. Today we hope to commemorate the contributions made by Canadians, but we also want to acknowledge that war is still an immediate reality for so many across our global community, and it is not enough for us to only remember. Remembering is only the first step. As we meet here today, there are over 50 armed conflicts ongoing in our world, and in this hour alone, over 500 refugees will be fleeing the conflict in Syria in hopes of finding the safety and security we too often take for granted. Whether you remember a specific conflict, or are fortunate enough to have never been directly impacted by war, we hope that you take the next hour to consider the cost, appreciate the peace we experience as Canadians, and decide how you can take action to ensure that no one has to live in fear of oppression or reprisal.
As of today, there are over 60 million people living in our world that are currently displaced by war. This is the greatest humanitarian crisis since the Second World War, and it is a stark reminder that we cannot take lightly the lessons learned by Canadians who sacrificed and suffered to try to bring stability and freedom to those who lived under oppression. 70 years ago, the Canadian Armed Forces helped end the scourge of Nazi aggression, and it was through this trial by fire that we learned some very hard lessons as a nation. Prior to the war, we were young as a country and naive. We attempted to insulate ourselves, and in doing so, we denied important freedoms to refugees desperate for help. Our own Prime Minister spoke out against immigration with stern policies like none is too many.
My own feeling is that nothing is to be gained by creating an internal problem in an effort to meet an international one. We must seek to keep this part of the continent free from unrest and from too great an intermixture of foreign strains of blood. I fear we would have riots if we agreed to a policy that admitted a number of Jews. William Lyon Mackenzie King, March 29, 1938.
While the Nazis were preparing for war and setting the stage for genocide, Canada was ignoring the threat of fascist oppression. Sadly, when a ship full of Jewish immigrants landed on our shores after being refused admittance by Cuba and America, we too turned our backs on them, forcing the 937 refugees to return to concentration camps in Germany. As inexcusable as our actions were, realities like this awakened in Canadians a need to ensure freedom for all.
We, the undersigned, as Christian citizens of Canada, respectfully suggest that under the powers invested in you as Prime Minister of our country, you forthwith offer to the homeless exiles on board the Hamburg St. Louis sanctuary in Canada. Petition to the Prime Minister, June 7, 1938.
The horrors of war in Europe forced a maturation, not just amongst the young soldiers who quickly realized the gravity of their task, but also in a nation, learning the values of hospitality, empathy, and peace are values that should be afforded to all, regardless of nation, religion, race, gender, or ethnicity. Canadian soldiers, refined through their experiences, learned this firsthand when they put their life on the line to help liberate the Netherlands from Nazi oppression.
And now to your country a good lasting memory of us, the gratitude of a nation that was itself again by your cooperation. Once our grandchildren will ask us who liberated us, and then we will say many brave boys with caps on their heads. We shall tell them all much, much more than that Montreal and Ottawa are the two big cities in Canada. Godspeed, boys. Maybe you will see a tear in the eyes of your mother, your wife, your girl, or your sister. But don't forget that a tear is a smile of the heart, and that same heart is beating in the small, low-lying country near the sea, Holland, that will set down your name in the chronicles of its history. Anneke Kluenberg, liberated Dutch citizen, March 10, 1946.
Lessons were only reinforced as Canadian soldiers began to see the full extent of Hitler's diabolical ambitions. In April of 1945, British and Canadians liberated Jewish prisoners starving in Bergen-Belsen. They began to share their stories, to provide stark reminders of the depravity that can grow when human rights are not extended to all.
If only to Frida's camp, the war has been just and worthwhile, but there must be others like it and worse. Sorry this has been such a fearful account, but you can't smell the place. If it's any consolation, I still can. You do realize that the people at home must know of this and what they've missed. I heard the average life of any person over 40 in the camp was 1 month. Shall be much more cheerful after a night's sleep, but today has been like a madhouse. Captain J. Gant, A Letter Home, April 18, 1945.
Canadian soldiers and citizens helped bring an end to the torment that faced Europe from 1939 to 1945. And in doing so, they also helped this nation understand its responsibility to our global community. Following the war, Canada became a sanctuary for so many displaced persons, as we adopted a reputation of global peacekeepers. We, here today, also have a responsibility that cannot be taken lightly, as there are still so many in our global community who have yet to share the freedoms we so enjoy. Charlotte Delbo, a resistance fighter who produced and distributed anti-fascist media before being captured, tortured, and sent to Auschwitz, wrote this poem, Well Interned.
I beg you, do something. Learn a dance step. Something to justify your existence. Something that gives you the right to be dressed in your skin, in your body hair. Learn to walk and to laugh, because it would be too senseless, after all, for so many to have died while you lived, doing nothing with your life. Charlotte Delbo, prayer to the living to forgive them for being alive.
If these 59.5 million persons were a nation, we would make up the 24th largest in the world.
The year 2014 has seen continuing dramatic growth in mass displacement from wars and conflict, once again reaching levels unprecedented in recent history. 1 year ago, the UNHCR announced that worldwide forced displacement numbers had reached 51.2 million, a level not previously seen in the post-World War II era. 12 months later, this figure has grown to a staggering 59.5 million, roughly equaling the population of Italy or the United Kingdom. As we move into the next portion of our assembly, we will be confronted with both statistics and stories. But please be reminded that the statistics shared are not just numbers. They represent real people whose lives have been impacted by the horrors of war. For example, this year in Germany alone, there were over 30,000 unaccompanied minors who applied for asylum. In other words, 30,000 children of various ages, some as young as 7 years old, arrived in Germany on their own without their parents as refugees. But let me bring this number to reality by telling you about Ahmad, who was a young refugee from Syria who arrived in Germany by himself. This piece of artwork by Ahmad depicts the violence that has torn apart his country. Instead of drawing pictures of playgrounds, sports, cars, or other things that children typically draw, he draws about tanks, planes bombing buildings, as well as people dead and wounded on the ground. Ahmad is only one of many with similar stories to share.
13.9 million. 13.9 million is the estimated number of individuals who were newly displaced due to conflict or persecution in 2014. This includes 11 million persons newly displaced within the borders of their own countries, the highest figure on record. The other 2.9 million individuals were new refugees.
We will now hear some stories from refugees in the Waterloo region who also have a Cameron Heights connection. Again, please be reminded that each number that has been shared is representative of people's stories like the ones you are about to hear.
As I was a teacher and both a student, a teacher I was teaching for an English school for 10 years.
I remember leaving, I was 9 months old at the time, and my parents basically grabbed all of their stuff they could in their hands. They grabbed me and my sister, and they literally got on 2 horses, and they had a couple of guides that obviously get paid some money, and they essentially smuggled us out of Afghanistan into Pakistan.
The students are always being targeted, mostly when they are going to the foreign supported educational centers.
So we had to leave our country about 2 years ago because the main reason was we were not safe there. We had a lot of organized crime and narco traffic in our country, and the government and the police are involved with them.
My father's father was part of the government, and I had uncles as well that was part of the government. So when your family's associated to the government, it's not really the best place to be at the time when a new regime is going to take over.
But now, since 2007, Afghanistan is not safe for anyone and anywhere.
We had to pay, actually. We had to make monthly payments. We had the sensation that we were going to die. We were worried about our kids because these people won't kill me or won't kill my husband, they will kill my kids.
living family or your brothers and sisters that you have lived for a long time is really difficult. But when you see there's no way except to leave them, that's the only option you have, and you can do nothing about it.
That they know everything about us. So we move 5 cities, they follow us.
And every time we look help for the police, they told us that we have to get the money and pay because that was the important thing.
One time we went with my daughter in the car and they started to follow me and he crashed my car with our car and my daughter was hurt. Yeah, my wife was in 9 months.
I was pregnant with my second son, my second child, and that was a big accident and my daughter was just bleeding and she was crying and I was pregnant and that must
have been so difficult.
It was.
No idea.
It was difficult.
It is.
$3.88 million. 3.88 million is the number of refugees from Syria alone in 2014.
What is it like to flee your home with only the clothes on your back? What is it like to risk it all for a chance to live in safety? What is it like for a mother and a father to risk the very lives of themselves and their children because they cannot live in a state of war and violence? This is the reality for many people around our world, including many Syrians who even now, as we sit, fleeing their country. Take a glimpse of what this harrowing journey looks like for Syrians fleeing the war that has consumed their homeland.
The majority of refugees that arrived in Greece or arrived in Europe arrived here on this island. So these beaches are where sometimes 60 to 70 boats will land here per day. Most of them have fled countries of conflict. They left all their belongings. Some of them have left even family members behind. They just flee for their own safety, and they flee for the hope of a better life. I mean, I can't even imagine leaving everything I know and coming to a place on a little raft, and you have no idea whether you're going to be welcomed, or you're going to be thrown in prison, or you're going to be, you just have no idea what to expect.
A lot of the moms are very visibly afraid, and to be handed someone else's child that's really humbling to be responsible to care for them, even for that grief of it.
Let's go this nice lady. Let's go. Take care of
It was hard to see children coming off soaking wet. Yesterday we saw a baby come in with a baby who was just 1 month old on it. And I just can't imagine a mom who gets on a boat like that that's so unsafe with their 1 month old infant, and how afraid she must have been that something would happen. And actually I was just fearful that they're not going to make it because they're going to die of hypothermia before they get anywhere safe. So I think it just epitomizes the desperation that we see in this situation that we find ourselves in.
They know about the border crossing. They know about what's happening in Hungary, about getting tear gassed and about getting stopped at the border. They know about boats crashing out here. Just yesterday, a boat was lost out at sea and people died. You know, almost every day one of these boats doesn't make it to shore.
You can tell they're traumatized by what has already been such a long journey, what they've been through, and what will be a really long journey still.
I think when they land, they're just so glad to be on dry land and safe that the reality of what lies ahead isn't really registering. So I don't think they realize that they now have several weeks' journey trying to get through Europe to their destination, and that journey is not going to be easy.
$5.9 million. 5.9 million is the number of refugees under the United Nations High Commission on Refugees that reside in countries where the GDP per capita was below USD 5,000.
It was a nice welcome to Canada at the Pittsburgh border.
We were in Pakistan for a few months, probably 9 months, and claimed refugee status. We applied refugee status to Australia, Germany, England, the US, and Canada. Canada came through first, and that's why we ended up here.
Being here alone, it's a challenge every day because it's just the four of us. There's no grandpa, no aunt, no sisters, no anything. My daughter was old enough to know what was happening, and when we moved here, we actually had to take her to therapy because the change was really bad for her, and she was thinking that nobody loves her, and that's why everybody left. And
when I was in 12th grade, my dad got my first report card, and he said, "Look, you know, we came to this country so you could have a better life for yourself. So, you know, you could spend the next 5 or 6 years getting a good education, getting a career for yourself, or you could kind of just blow it, and then who knows what you'll be doing for the rest of your life." So
now that we are here, we know why we didn't do this before. We could avoid many things. I had a miscarriage, I lost a baby. They almost killed my daughter, so we have a lot of things to be grateful. And the other thing is in our country, because the situation of our country, you care yourself and your family, and you don't care anyone else. And here you learn that is like right, that you have to care for other people, and you have to help, and you have to be there for someone else. So that's our.
You are part of the community is part of you too, so it's...
You have to be involved and share and take care of other ones, and that's what we learn.
Very good. I've I've heard that I had some friends who were from Mexico in a very similar situation. One of the things that his wife, Rosio, said to us was that Canada's different. There's people develop a community and people who don't even know each other end up helping and caring. And she said that was one of the biggest things about the difference between life here and life in Mexico. I find that to be really good, actually.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's like us. When we came here, we don't know about anyone and anybody.
And every people open their homes and say, okay, welcome here. And
what do you need? You need clothes, you need shoes. What do you need? You kids. So it's great. Yeah.
So that was great.
You are living your family, it is a part. But when you are living your life partner, it's something else. So, in such a circumstances that Afghanistan is not a safe country, leaving them in Afghanistan is the worst thing. But on the other side is to bring them here. And there is no way to bring them here. We should wait, and it is hard to feel it, and it's easy to say it.
When I came here, I can't speak any English. Only say hi, hello. So for me, it was a big challenge to learn the language, right? So in these 2 years, try to.
You're doing well. 2 years, you're doing very well. For 2 years, oh my goodness! I don't think I could learn Spanish in 10.
The Waterloo region has become a hub for refugees in Canada. This is mostly because of some key organizations in our region that support refugees. One of these organizations is the Mennonite Coalition for Refugee Support. MCRS is located just down the street on Queen Street from Cameron and is a hub for refugees to meet with service workers, access resources, get connected with lawyers, and to receive the personal support of people who care. In 2014, there were 68 new claims from 38 different countries in the Waterloo region. 500 families were supported by the Mennonite Coalition for Refugee Support last year alone. 77 volunteers contributed over 4,300 hours to support refugees in our community. And last year, MCRS spent almost $250,000 to support refugees in the Waterloo region. We are a region who cares about refugees, with many organizations and citizens contributing time, energy, and resources to the work of peace building, through caring for people who have often fled situations of conflict and violence. In fact, Canada as a nation has developed a reputation as being a place of refuge for people fleeing the realities of war and violence in their countries. In a moment, we will observe the last post, a minute of silence, and then reveille. During that moment of silence, I encourage you to reflect on our Canadian values of hospitality, empathy, and peace. And this morning, we will be observing the last post as played at Menin Gates in Ypres, Belgium, where this summer one of our staff members shot this very special moment of remembrance. Would you stand with me, please? You may be seated. So far this morning, we have considered the horror and reality of war. We have spent time remembering those that have gone before us, that sacrificed so much for our freedom. We have also considered the impact of war and violence on everyday, ordinary people around the world, and the current refugee crisis in our world as a result of a world wrapped in violence and conflict. However, we do not need to feel powerless in the face of such great need. I would argue that we have a responsibility to be active in the work of peace building in the world around us. What does this look like? How can we engage? Listen to these stories of refugees as they talk about how they were welcomed and how we can welcome others.
Another big hurdle for my father was while he did have a degree, it wasn't really recognized here, so he had some difficulty trying to show that he had the knowledge in order to take out some of the career positions that other people would easily get here. So that was a big tough thing for him. My dad actually delivered pizzas for the first year just to make sure there was food on the table. So it was a little bit of a challenge for him, knowing he had such a high position, and you come here and it's almost worthless at that point. So from my own experience, I know a lot of people go through depression because of stuff like that.
I'm working right now for Lenamar and Guelph, and it's good to start.
I think that one of the more important things is include the young people in the community, because you feel that you are part of something. When my daughter started school here, she met a girl and she was just awesome for Vanessa to be good here. Her name is Kate, and honestly, I don't have enough words to say how grateful I am with that girl, because my daughter wasn't speaking English. She doesn't speak in Spanish, and she was just trying to be a friend and, okay, Vanessa, come. And she was using signs to talk to my daughter and introducing all the girls by using, like that. And that was just amazing, and I cried the very first time that I saw that. So I think it's, I don't know, with teenagers, I think it will be different. But when you are new in some place and you don't know the language and someone care about you and try to involve you in activities, or that means a lot.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is probably understanding where people are from and helping them integrate into whatever function or society that they're in, whether it be in the classroom in PE and somebody's never played a game before, helping them come along, or just in conversation. Some people, English is not their first language, so that becomes a big hurdle that requires some understanding and some patience. So,
and the government of Canada can help the refugees is to bring this to the shortest which is possible. We don't say a lot, but possible. That's the biggest thing that can help the refugees, because they can settle as soon as possible.
I'd say one of the hardest things coming over here as a refugee is, as you're growing up, you're trying to still learn your own culture while trying to integrate into another culture, and it becomes very difficult. A lot of kids find that difficulty. Myself, I'm from Afghanistan, I'm a Muslim, and growing up in the early 80s and 90s, you have pizza day at school. It's a very simple thing, but you get pepperoni pizza, and next thing you know, you can't eat it because it has pork in it. So it's those are things that people have to deal with, and you try to figure out your own culture while you're still trying to integrate it. You want to kind of hang on to that stuff, but you also want to be able to be a part of the society here and contribute.
Yeah, it's try to help other kids, especially because kids sometimes, or many times, not say anything, but they have feelings inside very hard. So for teenagers, try to help other teenagers, because it's hard to live
and be alone in a way, so far from your family and all the people you care and all your friends. When you move, you left everything behind.
Yeah, a simple hello is say, hello, hi, how are you? How do you feel today?
And that's
this is a big help, only say that. Yeah.
I mean, everyone learns from history. The diversity of the world is what helps us move forward, right? People learn from their mistakes. People learn what's good from one culture, and maybe something that they don't want to pick up, but they learn something good from it. If people were to give that up, I think we'd be almost one-dimensional.
And we were lucky to be in Canada.
Are you glad to be here?
I am very glad.
Very glad.
And grateful.
How can we respond to the reality of war in the world around us? We heard some really simple ways of just being human and connecting with one another from some of the refugees in our community. But there are a few other tangible ways that we can begin to engage in the work of peace building, even today following the assembly. And I want to highlight a few of those ways in the coming moments. One of those ways is to engage in the Bring Her Home to Our Home campaign. This campaign is a grassroots initiative that began when a Syrian family in the Waterloo region approached a Canadian family and asked them to try and help them sponsor their grandmother to be able to leave the dangerous situation in Syria and come to Canada. This Canadian family began the process of sponsorship and are now in the waiting stages to hear if their sponsorship application will be accepted. However, along with their application, they began the Bring Her Home to Our Home campaign to raise awareness about the plight of Syrians, as well as involve as many people as possible in supporting their application to bring the Syrian grandmother to be reunited with her family. You can take one small step of engagement today by simply taking a selfie with this poster and posting it on your social media using the hashtags listed at the bottom of the poster. This is not affiliated with any organization. It's just a family at Cameron Heights engaging deeply in the work of peace building. And we have the opportunity to support them simply by taking a selfie and posting it on social media. The poster that you see me standing with here, this is my selfie on my Facebook, those will be in your homeroom classes or your next classes that you'll go to this morning. You can consider whether you'd like to be a part of this campaign. The really interesting thing that I've experienced over the last several days after I posted this on my Facebook was a number of people who asked me about what this campaign is and talked to me about what is the issue with facing Syrians in the world today. And so it sparked a conversation that I hope, if we as a community support, there'll be all kinds of conversations about the reality of refugees and particularly Syrians in our world today. A second way that you can engage is to support the student-run initiative Songs for Syria. This is a concert that's happening on Saturday, November 28th at Queen Street Commons. This is an amazing opportunity for us as a larger community to support initiatives of peace building that are being created by members of our own student body. All proceeds from this concert will go to support the on-ground refugee relief efforts in Syria. Please check out the Songs for Syria Facebook page for more information. And lastly, you have the opportunity to participate with a couple of student activities run initiatives. One is a campaign, a charities campaign that's already begun in your homerooms. Throughout November, the charities will be collecting money for the Mennonite Central Committee, also to be used for on-ground refugee relief efforts in Syria. But beyond just the financial contribution that you might want to contribute, and there'll be the opportunity again tomorrow in your homerooms to contribute to charities, you might want to participate in the Refugee Welcome Package effort that Student Activities is running over the next month. These refugee packages are put together and then sent to Mennonite Coalition for Refugee Support just down the street and are delivered to families as they arrive as their first entry point into Canada. And you can see the list of things that are in each one of those welcome packages. We're going to be running a challenge in homerooms over the next month to see which homeroom can put together the most number of packages. And the winner will get a pizza party in the second week of December. We have roughly 70 homerooms at Cameron Heights. And so imagine that if every single homeroom even put together one refugee welcome package, that would be 70 families coming to our region that would positively be impacted by your simple act of peace building. The reality is that we have the power to create change in the world. We have the capacity in Canada to work for peace on behalf of those who cannot. We have the ability to not only remember this Remembrance Day, but to join in the struggle for peace in the world around us. As my button says, to remember means to work for peace.
Come
As the choir left the assembly, they left holding on to a light, which represents each of us leading in power to contribute one small part of who we are to the ongoing work of peace building in the world around us. Go now empowered to engage in the work of hospitality, empathy, and peace.